Welcome and thank you for joining us in this question and answer opportunity with Board of Director candidate Mike Ryder. My name is David Garvin. I'm the GM at Sun Village and will serve as the moderator for this session. Mr. Ryder is running for election to one of the 4 open positions on the Board of Directors. Voting will get underway this month and will conclude on January 7th at the Sun Village Community Association annual meeting. Please stay observant for the email communications and the postcard notice that will be sent to you regarding how to vote and also with regard to specifics of the annual meeting. I want to welcome Mr. Ryder and thank him for taking part this morning, and we're going to move forward and get underway with our question and answers.
Thank you, David.
I'd like to provide you, Mike, with the opportunity to introduce yourself and also have a few opening words if you'd like, and we'll move on to the questions after that.
I don't have a lot to say. My name is Mike Ryder. I've been a resident of Sun Village for about 8 years, full-time for about 3 or 4. And frankly, I decided it was time to do a little bit more heavily volunteer work into the village, and that's why I'm here today.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go down a list of pre-determined questions here, and we're going to try to hold each to 2 minutes. So I'll articulate the question. Mike, you have a list of questions in front of you if you need a little bit of refresher on the question, and we'll hear what you have to say. First question. Serving on a board can sometimes require a significant commitment of time. How much time do you expect will be required, and how much time will you commit to contribute?
Well, I'll answer the second part. I'll commit to contribute whatever it takes to get the job done. I would expect to be on time for all board meetings, both workshops and meetings, to attend committee meetings as assigned, and to participate in those meetings. But to be honest with you, David, my focus would be that if in the beginning of this term I'm spending 5 or 6 hours a month, at the end of this term I'd like to be spending 2 or 3 hours a month, because that's what I see the responsibility of the board. I believe that's why we hired First Service, is to move that day-to-day operations to First Service management, where the board takes a bigger picture. And in order to do that, I think once that's accomplished, I think that our time becomes less and less. So I'm here to do what's necessary and to provide my time as needed. But again, I'd like to see that reduced throughout the year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ryder. I'm going to ask question number 2. Have you substantially reviewed the Sun Village governing documents?
The short answer is no. I have not. I am well aware that there are several documents that require us to adhere to those documents, such as bylaws, tract declarations, and the like. I'm familiar with tract declarations because of my work in Pueblo, and I'm familiar with bylaws. But to be honest, as a board member, I want to rely on the manager to give us guidance as to what applies, what we need to look at. I want to rely on the attorney when necessary, and when we bring an attorney in for an opinion. And when necessary, I'm going to do the research into the proper documents to make sure that we are following that governance and that we are doing our due diligence when it comes to making decisions. We've looked at all the documents that pertain to a subject, and we've listened to our experts, and we make informed decisions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Assuming that the board works as a team, how do you plan to be a team player in your position on the Board of Directors?
In my past work experience working for the state of Michigan, I was involved in quite a few teams. I came into the tail end of the Bureau of Elections in setting up what is known as a new voter file throughout the state. It was a statewide file. Required that we work with thousands of Michigan clerks and a teamwork of people on staff. So I do bring that to the podium, to the board. My objective would be to listen, to evaluate and discuss, any issue and to thoroughly understand that issue, to support other board members when the issue's not really burning in me, but I understand that it is an issue of theirs. In addition, I would work with the committees as liaison has assigned, that those committees bring those in, bring in their ideas, bring in their focus, and that in a team environment, we work together, we come to a common decision, and we support that decision once it's made. May not be the best answer I like, but it's an answer that through discussion, through interaction with other board members, and through interaction with community members, we've come to an agreement. We've come to a middle of the road. And that middle of the road would have my full support.
Thank you. What was your major influence for deciding to run for the board this year, and what do you bring to the table?
My major influence was probably the golf course. I am an avid golfer. I golf here at Sun Village at least twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. I believe the golf course is the largest single asset we have. I think the golf course and its accompanying green space attracts a lot of residents, whether they're golfers or non-golfers. The golf course from a distance looks pretty good. As a golfer, when you're on it, there is a lot of areas that need attention. Not big attention, but it's minor stuff that make a golf course appealing. Geese is an issue. Leveling of tee boxes is an issue. So that is the reason why I'm here today. And as I look at that golf course, there are other areas of the community, but that was my big decision. That's why I'm here today.
Okay, thank you. Serving on a board carries significant fiduciary responsibilities. How do you view your fiduciary responsibilities, and how will that impact the way you approach your participation on the board?
Well, the short answer is that we need to act in the best interest of the HOA. However, that really breaks down to 3 different areas that, you know, as a fiduciary and in this role, that we need to take care in making decisions, that those decisions are made based on research into our governing documents, based on listening to our experts, listening to our attorneys when we ask for an attorney's opinion. It also requires that I be loyal to the HOA and loyal to its residents, which means, especially when talking about residents, that we're not divulging anything that is private information. The last piece of that is that we got to act. I can't sit here and not take this responsibility seriously. I can't sit here and not act. That once we have all the information on any given subject, then we need to act appropriately in guidance with state statute, with our bylaws, with our tract declarations, and with advice from our outside experts.
Okay, thank you. Can you describe for us how you see the board of directors versus the role of the management company, First Service?
I see the board of directors as setting direction for the HOA and for this community. We are not involved in day-to-day management. The board needs to define the direction that we want this community to go. For example, one of the things that I believe is lacking is, what is the goal of the golf course? Is the goal of our golf course to make money? Is the goal of our golf course to serve its residents at the exclusion of making money, or is there a common ground there? And sometimes I'm not so sure we know what that ground is. So I see the board as needing to develop with its stakeholders what that vision is. And personally, I see that vision as somewhere in between. That we need to be cognizant of the fact that the golf course brings in money, brings in additional revenue, but not at the expense of our residents. Once that goal is established and that direction given, then it's up to the management team to implement that. And it's up to Dave and his staff to look at those areas and take the village forward in day-to-day operation. But I really see the role of the board, and as of a board member, is setting that direction, setting that tone, working with our committees to find new amenities that we can bring to the village that would enhance village life, and look at setting priorities for what needs to be done. Do we need to readjust this long-term maintenance schedule based on something that's happened? For example, I know you're working on common walls. It's something that needs to be done, and needs to be done a couple of years ago. But our operation in that is only to approve the contracts once you bring them to us. Once that's done, then it's your team that's responsible to carry out that. We don't need to worry about it. That's a done deal. Let's move on.
Okay, thank you. What specific project or issues are of particular interest to you and for the board to work on over the next year?
The next year, I'm not sure about. In the next 2 years, beyond COVID, one of the things that I think we need to do, whether the village wants to come in kicking and screaming or not, is the 21st century. I'm sorry, but not my idea of a good time to get up at 4 a.m. to stand in line to buy tickets to concerts. I think that there's a medium. I think with all of the availability of electronics, that we can come to an online ticketing system that still provides tickets for people who do not have access to the internet. Frankly, I see 5 a.m. on a January morning as being dangerous. It's cold out there. I realize we're in the desert, but it's still cold out there. So I would like to see an online ticketing system. I'd like to see that we take a look at some of our very large expenses. One of our very large expenses is our security issue. We have security guards 24/7, 365 days a year. Do we need them? Do we need a security guard from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m.? Or can we lock this place down and use a keypad entry? It would be interesting from my standpoint as to how many people come into the village between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Maybe your son who just flew in, but chances are you went to pick him up and you came in the back gate. You didn't use the front gate. So I realize that we bought in this community because it's a gated community with 24/7 security. But at the same time, it's a huge expense. And it's an expense that I think is maybe ripe for the picking. Maybe, but it certainly is an expense worth looking at. So those are a couple of them. I think any of the others is that I'd like to see some more amenities. I'd like to see the board act on the fireplace, the fire pit that was brought to them last year. I realize COVID has kind of screwed things up a little bit, but it ain't gonna be here forever. And I wanna position the board so that once that issue is resolved, we're ready to move forward, we're ready to enhance life here, and that we keep moving forward, because I think that's how we keep our property values up, how we keep our community up.
Well, that's the conclusion of our pre-canned questions here, and I want to applaud you for some meaningful responses. I also want to provide you with some time, Mike, to make some closing remarks if you'd like.
Well, just a short one. 2020 has been a tough year for everybody. But it's a year that I think when we look back on it, we'll be very grateful for this year. This is a year we connected with family. And it's all going to be behind us. So at some point, we need to look forward, and I want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to all of the residents of Sun Village. I hope 2021 is way more prosperous and a lot more fun than 2020. And I want to urge you to take a look at all of the candidates running. You're going to have the opportunity to look at 5 YouTube videos. If you find a better candidate, vote for them. But if you don't, I would appreciate your vote at the time that ballots are sent out. Thanks, David.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryder. We greatly appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome, and thank you for joining us for a question and answer opportunity with Board of Director candidate Vicki Cade. My name is David Garvin. I'm the GM for Sun Village and will serve as the moderator for this session. Vicki is running for election to one of 4 open positions on the Board of Directors. Voting will get underway this month and will conclude on January 7th at the Sun Village Community Association annual meeting. Please stay observant for the email communications and postcard notice that will be sent to you regarding the details of the election process and the annual meeting. And I want to add that if you have any questions about any of that, once you receive the emails and the postcard, give my office a call or an email, and we'd be happy to assist you and answer any questions that you have. Welcome, Vicki. I want to thank you for taking part this morning, and I'd ask you to take the podium. And again, Vicki Cade is with us, and she's running for election to the Board of Directors, and we'd like to start off with providing Vicki with an opportunity to say a few words of introduction.
Hi, my name's Vicki Cade. I'm a full-time resident of Sun Village. My husband and I moved here in September of 2019, and we certainly enjoy Sun Village. We think it's beautiful, we love the residents, and all that it has to offer for the residents. I have 5 children, 2 that live in Arizona and 3 that live in Michigan.
Okay, thanks, Vicki. We'll get started with the questions. So I'll ask the questions, and if you could respond, we'll just move through these 7 canned questions, if you will,
Okay.
and then we'll get to another part of the meeting here. Okay, number 1, serving on a board can sometimes require a significant commitment of time. How much time do you expect will be required, and how much time will you commit to contribute?
Well, I've previously served on a board of directors for our local teachers association, which was 900 teachers, and I was the secretary of the board of directors for 12 years. So I do understand the time commitment that is involved. I know that serving on the board of directors here, there are scheduled meetings. I know there's unscheduled meetings, there's committee meetings, there's meetings as events come up and we need to get together. There's also a commitment, I believe, to thoroughly prepare by reading the material that has been presented prior to the meeting. I just can't put a time limit down on this type of activity. I think it ebbs and flows, and I am the type of person who makes a commitment and feels that, and if it takes time, it takes time. I'm willing to put that time in.
Okay, thank you. Have you substantially reviewed the Sun Village governing documents?
I have reviewed the Sun Village CCRs and the bylaws. They're quite lengthy, and I have to say that I have a basic understanding of these documents. I certainly, when making a decision, would need to reference them, considering all the information that is in there and in the ability to make an informed decision. I also had the opportunity in October to attend the First Service training meeting that was made available to people that were interested in becoming on the board, and from that meeting, I received knowledge on how successful an HOA committee, board members, what they need to do to be successful and what the board needs to do. So I think I have a basic understanding of that as well, and I certainly would attend any further trainings that First Service offers. I consider myself to be a lifelong learner, and I love learning.
Very good, thank you. Under the correct assumption, I would say, that the board works as a team. How do you plan to be a team player in your position on the board of directors?
I believe being a team player is a significant component of life in general. So, as a team player, I would attend all meetings unless an emergency arose. I would listen with respect to other people's opinions and without prejudice. I would participate in meetings and contribute my thoughts. I would be flexible in my thinking, and I certainly would respect other people, their thoughts, and their opinions.
Okay, thank you. What was your major influence for deciding to run for the board this year, and what do you bring to the table?
Well, as I mentioned previously, I absolutely love Sun Village. I feel it's a privilege to live here, and in the morning when I get up and have my cup of coffee on the patio, or I'm in the swimming pool exercising, I look up to the sky and say, I am so blessed to live here. So, after 2 years of living here, I would like to become a more active member in our community, and I would like to actively be involved in maintaining the integrity of our community and the beauty of the community and meet the needs of the residents that are here. And what do I bring to the table? I bring a lot of experience. I am a retired school social worker. I have developed an ability to communicate with others and to listen to others without prejudice. I know how to work in crisis situations because a lot of my job was in crisis and in stressful situations. So I have learned how to remain calm and to think things through. I also bring the ability to work in groups. I have been on numerous committees as an employee of our school district, and I have worked with students, families, and teachers to see that the participants and stakeholders were best served. I have served, as I said, on committees, and of note, I served on the strategic planning committee for our school district, and I also, again, served on our HVA board, our local union board, and I also worked with redistricting, which meant many people, many opinions, many concerns, and I successfully also worked on that. So I think those are the qualities I bring and experience.
Okay, thank you. Serving on a board carries significant fiduciary responsibilities. How do you view your fiduciary responsibilities, and how will that impact the way you approach your participation on the board?
My fiduciary responsibilities are my number one priority. I think that that is the most important thing that I would be participating in. I would, as a member of the board, keep that in mind and service our community and make thoughtful and practical decisions.
Okay. Can you describe for us how you see the role of the board of directors versus the role of the management company First Service?
Okay. Well, the role of the board of directors is setting goals, policies, and following through to see that the needs of our residents and our community are being met. On the other hand, our management company First Service follows up on those. They more or less enforce the rules, see that they're being followed. They do many other things. They work with our ancillary services. They work with lawyers, investors. They have the accounting, multiple other things. They manage, we make the policies.
Okay. What specific project or issues are of particular interest to you and for the board to work on over the next year?
My particular issues of interest all surround communication at this time. I think that communication is key when you're working with individuals, and I know our residents want to be informed of things that are going on in the community. Number one, now we're in a Zoom world, and many of the meetings come through on Zoom. I would like to see at the board meetings, the auditory component of Zoom being improved. I find it difficult. I attend the meetings, sometimes I can hear what's going on, and sometimes I can't. And the board meetings are important for members to attend because they get input on what's going on, and that is also their opportunity to express ideas and concerns. So that would be my number one, actually. Number two is the community website. It's very difficult to manipulate. It is not user-friendly, and so I would hope that we would have the opportunity to also work on that as well. I know an ongoing project that we have been working on is communication, and I hope that that continues. I hope that residents continue to get communication on the work that is being done in the community and also project timelines. And lastly, I would like to see the board develop a strategic plan going forward.
Okay, very good. Vicki Cade, thank you very much, and I want to offer you at this point a opportunity for some closing remarks if you'd like.
Well, I want to thank the members that have put together this video because I think it's a great way to get out information during this time when we can't all meet together. I hope that you consider my qualifications and my desire to continue to make Sun Village successfully run and managed, and I want everyone to have their needs met. Sun Village is a great place to be. It's a popular place to be. Many people. It's not easy actually to even get a residence in this community. So let's keep it great. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, my name's Dave Garvin. I'm the GM for Sun Village Community Association. I want to welcome you to today's opportunity to have an introduction, in this case by Director Candidate Kim Drayden. And I'm going to ask him to approach in a few moments here. I wanted to point out that Mr. Drayden is running for election to one of 4 open positions on the Board of Directors. Voting will get underway this month and conclude on January 7th at the Sun Village Community Association annual meeting. Please stay observant for the email communications and also the postcard notice that will be sent to you regarding the details of the election and the annual meeting process. So that's some housekeeping out of the way. I'd like to welcome and introduce Mr. Kim Drayden. And thank you for participating, and please approach. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. Sure appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, we'd like to start actually by seeing if you'd like to say a few words of introduction.
Well, my name is Kim Drayden. I've been coming to Sun Village for the past, since the late 80s, when my in-laws were one of the first owners in the village. I snowbirded for about almost 15 years. We bought our first home in the village in 2009. My wife and I, Diane, we have a son who lives in Kansas City. For all those Kansas City Chiefs who don't go, they're doing outstanding right now. So pretty much that's really all I have to say.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. We'll get to the questions.
Get to the stuff.
First question. Serving on the board can sometimes require a significant commitment of time. How much time do you expect will be required, and how much time will you commit to contribute?
I think the time commitment will depend on what's facing the board. There'll be times when you're really going to have to put in a lot of time to get some project, to make sure that project stays on time. There's other times when we may not have to do so much time. I'll do it every time that I need in order to accomplish our goals. I think one thing that we want to be certain of is that oftentimes in boards, especially volunteer boards, you have some people, they put in a lot of time. The problem with that is it kind of scares other people. They say, well, you know what, I would really like to be on the board, but I can't put in 8 hours a day. So the board should, we should put in whatever time's necessary, but not go too overboard. It shouldn't be a full-time job.
Thank you. Have you substantially reviewed the Sun Village governing documents?
Substantial, that's a good question. You really look at these over whenever you have a problem. So, and I really haven't had a lot of, I think a lot of problem. But yes, I have spent time reviewing the CC&Rs and yeah, so I put in some time.
Okay.
And of course, as a board, I'll be putting in a lot more time and understanding.
Okay, thank you. Under the correct assumption that the board operates as a team, how do you plan to be a team player in your position on the board of directors?
I'll go to what I used to do for like a lot of the youth organizations on being the board. First of all, I like people, and that helps a lot. I really enjoy working with people. I'm open-minded and flexible. I may have an idea that I think is the greatest idea in the world, but if someone comes and says, hey, listen, I would like for you to rethink that, then I'm going to rethink it. I'm going to open myself up to any suggestions that people may have. And I appreciate what the other members will bring to the table. We always have our different experiences, and that will help me to mold and making my decisions and being part of the team. And I'll hold myself accountable for my decisions, which I think is real important in a team dynamic.
Okay. Now, what was the major influence for you deciding to run for the board this year, and what do you bring to the table?
I knew when I was going to be down here full time that it takes a lot for the community to operate properly. So I knew I was going to spend some time. My goal was, when I retired about 2 years ago, was to spend at least a year getting my ducks in order. Basically spending time with my wife, doing all the projects that we wanted done in the house, getting that in order. When I was president of a Little League, every summer was just gone. It was just completely gone. My grass was growing high, and all these things that you wanted to, you just didn't have time. So I really wanted to spend my first year and a half just getting all these little projects done, spending the commitment and time with my wife, because I do know once if I am on the board, I will be spending there will be a lot of time.
Okay. Serving on a board carries significant fiduciary responsibilities. How do you view your fiduciary responsibilities, and how will that impact the way you approach your participation on the board?
I brought these because this, to me, is what will guide my responsibilities. Okay, we have the Sun Village Association of disclosure of action. So this is one of the items I'll go to. In addition to that, we have what's the condo planned community statutes of Arizona. So I'll look at this. I think one of the things, one of the advantages that we have with having First Service is our legal counsel is Maxwell and Morgan. I believe, and Maxwell and Morgan, they have an app. They have an app for this, and so and it's open, I believe, to anyone. So if you have some questions or some concerns, you can go right to the app, look at your, says, oh, okay, I want to know what the definitions are, and it's really intuitive. You can use that. So this is what I will use, to keep me on track of my responsibilities, and I think the due diligence. Before a decision is made, I want to research that. I want to find out that we are making the right decisions, for the community, and to act within my scope and the board's scope of responsibility. And to understand that, I go to these things.
Okay, Kim, thank you. Can you describe for us how you see the role of the board of directors versus the role of the management company, First Service?
We are, basically the governing body. In a layman's term, I guess you could say, First Service, they work for us. They work for the board. We will set out what the ground rules are, what the regulations are, which are, again, come back to our documents there. And so the management company will carry out the day-to-day operations. As you're aware, there's a lot that goes on. This is a good-sized business, and that day-to-day, we have to have someone to take care of that. The board will set the rules, and we'll see that management follows those through. So basically, the board works for us, and we work for the members, or we represent the members. So.
All right, thank you. What specific project or issues are of particular interest to you and for the board to work on over the next year?
I think the one you usually hear a lot in these situations is communication, and that's good. But how do we set up that communication? That's really something I'd like to work on immediately. In other words, if Mrs. Jones wants to have an understanding of the CC&Rs, she should not really have to go pull out the old binder that when she bought her house 10 years ago. I would like it so that, they should be able to go online, find that information quickly. Seamlessly is what I would like to see happen. Part of my background is also security, so I would really like to see and understand what the responsibilities of our security firm is. I know a general idea, but I would like to see, really have an understanding of what their job entails, what their processes and procedures are. I think that's really important. I don't have a lot of pre-goals or ideas at this time. I'm still trying to gather information. But I do know that I would like to make sure that everybody and all the amenities are represented, and to make sure that one particular amenity isn't, because one may bring in more revenue, to make sure that everyone is represented. So.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir. We'd like to give you an opportunity, Kim, to have some closing remarks if you'd like.
Some closing remarks. I should have prepared for those closing, closing remarks. Look, all I can say is that I believe I'm an honest person. I believe in people. I would really like to see our community to stay within our, what our vision is. We're an active community, and I would like to make sure that we can maintain an active community. I think part of my strength is seeing what the vision is and seeing that the group stays on course with that vision. That's really what the board is. We're supposed to stay on course with the vision of Sun Village. Being an active community, being a community that has unique landscapings, we have desirable, amenities, and to make sure that we keep it a socially, engaging community, a physically active community, and one with, where we're exchanging intellectual ideas, where we don't put down each other because we may have a difference of opinions, a difference of views, and so forth. So.
Outstanding. I'd like to congratulate you on participating today, and I'd like to wrap us up if I could.
Okay. Oh, yeah. And I guess I should say it. Oh, yeah. I want your vote. All right. Thank you.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for our question and answer opportunity with Board of Director candidate Mr. Pete Shoup. My name is David Garvin. I'm the General Manager for Sun Village Community Association, and I'll serve as the moderator for this session. Mr. Shoup is running for election to one of 4 open positions on the Board of Directors. Voting will get underway this month and will conclude on January 7th at the Sun Village Community Association annual meeting. Please stay observant for the email communications and the postcard notice that are to be sent to you, and they are with regard to the details of the election process and the annual meeting. And I'm going to reinforce now, if you have any questions, contact my office and we can assist you. And we'll reinforce that again at the conclusion of the segment here. So I want to welcome Mr. Pete Shute and thank him for taking part in the presentation today. Mr. Shute.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here today to share a few thoughts and answer some questions leading up to the election for Board of Director.
Okay, Pete, thank you very much. Okay, we'll get right to it here. Serving on a board can sometimes require a significant commitment of time. How much time do you expect will be required, and how much time will you commit to contribute?
I gave this question some thought, and before I applied, as well as after seeing the questions. And my estimation is that anywhere from 10 to 15 hours per week would be in a reasonable amount of time to expect a board member to put the work in necessary to do the job well. And again, that may vary, but I'm fully retired. Been 4 years now since I've worked, so I have the time to make the commitment.
Okay, thank you. Have you substantially reviewed the Sun Village governing documents?
I have. I've read the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, commonly referred to as the CC&Rs, numerous times, and our other governing documents, rules and regulations, several times. So I'm pretty familiar with those documents.
Okay, thank you, sir. The Board of Directors operates considerably as a team. And how do you plan to be a team player in your position on the Board of Directors?
I'm a firm believer in data-driven decision-making. That being, you gather information from numerous sources, you listen to it, you weigh it, and you let the data and the true information and the facts be your guide on how you make decisions. And that being said, being one of 7 members on a board, it's imperative that each member, including myself, would give the other members the opportunity to share their views, their information. And so in that, I see that as a team effort to come to the best decisions for Sun Village.
Thank you, Pete. What was the major influence for you deciding to run for the board this year, and what do you bring to the table?
Well, over the last couple of years, I've been a pretty vocal and frequent critic of Sun Village Board of Directors leadership and management. And so I told myself, you can't sit on the sidelines and throw rocks if you're not willing to step up and do the work. So that was my primary goal, is that I wanted to be part of the solution instead of sitting on the sidelines and pointing out shortcomings. I think Sun Village is an absolutely great place to live. My wife Joanne and I could have chosen anywhere in the world basically to retire to, and we chose Sun Village. I don't have any delusions that Sun Village will ever be perfect, but I think that we can always be better.
Thank you. Serving on a board carries significant fiduciary responsibilities. How do you view your fiduciary responsibilities, and how will that impact the way you approach your participation on the board?
Well, my background is in public school maintenance and operations. I did that for 37 years in my career in Tacoma, Washington, and as that relates to fiduciary responsibility, I have the view that if we have an issue that needs to be addressed, that we spend the resources and the time to do it correctly the first time, and not spend more money over 3 attempts to correct the same problem. So I look at that as my kind of guide for fiduciary responsibility to Sun Village.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can you describe for us how you see the role of the board of directors versus the role of our management company, First Service?
I view a board of directors as the organization that would write and set policy, establish mission goals for Sun Village, and then to clearly and effectively relay those messages to management, who then would have the day-to-day task of the maintenance and operations, and to carry out the task in support of those goals and mission statements, and working collaboratively together with management so that, again, Sun Village becomes better.
Okay, thank you, sir. What specific project or issues are of particular interest to you and for the board to work on in the next year?
My number one goal is transparency of process. I think that there shouldn't be any backroom handshake deals, communication, cross-communication between board members, that the law is clear. When 4 or more board members are together conducting business, it needs to be done in the open. I think that our board of directors owes it to the community to adhere to those rules as a high standard. And it will be my goal as a board member to seek that out and to communicate with the help of management to the community, to have much better communication than what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years. For example, I would say our access control at the front gate. It's unclear what the process is for getting people on a list of frequent visitors, but again, that goes back, board of directors sets policy, writes that policy, relays it to management, management gets that done, but then it needs to go the next step of being broadly communicated to the community so that everybody knows what the process is. So number one would be transparency of process and communicate to people. The next 2 would be project identification and prioritization, as well as project management.
Okay, very good. We worked our way down through the 7 questions, and and I'd like to extend to you the opportunity for some closing statements.
Well, I would just like to ask the community to support me in my efforts to gain a seat at the table on the board of directors, and wish everyone well and to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pete Shue. Welcome and thank you for joining us for a question and answer opportunity with Board of Director candidate Jim Connor. My name is David Garvin. I'm the GM, General Manager at Sun Village Community Association, and I'll also serve as the moderator for this session. Mr. Connor is running for election to one of 4 open positions on the board. Voting will get underway this month and will conclude on January 7th at the Sun Village Community Association annual meeting. Please stay observant for the email communications and also the postcard notice that will be sent to you regarding the details of the election process and the annual meeting. Welcome, Jim, and thank you for joining us today. To get underway, I'd like to ask Jim to introduce himself and also for any opening statements you have.
Okay, David, thank you for inviting me. My name is Jim Connor. I'm currently a board member. My term expires next month, and I'm running for a 2nd term. I'll just get straight to the questions and then try to sum it up at the end.
Okay. All right, let's get after it here. Okay, serving on a board can sometimes require a significant commitment of time. how much time do you expect will be required, and how much time will you commit to contribute?
The short answer is as much time as required. The realistic answer, I think, is probably the neighborhood of 10 hours a month. I know the boards in the past 5 or 6 years have exceeded that, but I do know from my experience on the boards from 2009 to 2012, we had 1 hour a month board meetings. They never exceeded that. We didn't at that time even have board workshops, and not much has changed. It's the same village, the same number of houses, the same problems. I think when we started into my current term back in 18, one of the issues is that we had a very high amount of micromanagement, and even though we've made some progress in that, I think we have a ways to go, and I'm very confident that we can do what is necessary to do and get it done in a much less time, than what we've been doing in the past.
Thank you, Jim. Have you substantially reviewed the Sun Village governing documents?
I'm confident that I probably am up to speed on the governance documents as well as anybody in the village. I also feel comfortable in a general sense regarding all the legislative issues that have to be faced, most of which were created by boards that made dumb decisions. And I'm also comfortable with parliamentary procedures and really support that we should go back to Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay. Given that the board operates as a team, how do you plan to be a team player in your position on the board of directors?
I think that's a fairly simple proposition, maybe harder to do than it is to enunciate. Number one, be independent. You're not representing any one group, village, faction, or anything of that nature. Number two, listen before you talk. Number three, it's certainly all right to disagree, but not to be disagreeable. And finally, fourth, and I think the crucial one, is once a vote is taken, whether it be 4-3, 5-2, 6-1, or 7-0, and regardless of whether you supported it or did not support it, once there are 4 members who say this is what we're going to do, everybody is connected and committed.
Okay. What was the major influence in your decision to run for the board of directors?
3 years ago, I was asked by several residents if I would consider running. And at that time, I declined because I didn't think that there was the commitment that was required. You have to have a little bit of fire in your belly to want to do a job that pays so much. And then 2 years ago, I was asked by 2 board members to run, and I did. And this year, I very frankly was not planning to run again for the next term. And that was my attitude as late as September of this year. And I disclosed that to the rest of the board members that were at that time on board. And I was a little surprised. I individually from each of the 6 other board members was approached, please run again, will you please do something about your not wanting to run. I think that probably influenced me more than anything, that plus the fact that I've been involved in recruiting some of the newer people who have appointed or who have applied, excuse me. And I think we're at a point where we're going to change and get some new blood in, and it might be good for an old guy to hang around for the transition. Plus, I was involved pretty much in the changing of the general manager, so I think it would be well to keep in that game for a year or two also.
And I failed to mention the second part of this question, so I'll ask it now. What do you feel you bring to the table as far as experience and that sort of thing?
No problem. I think just the actions of the other 6 board members, I would like to think indicates that I have the respect and the support of many people who not always agree on everything, and I think they have seen that there's a commitment there. And I think my previous experience before the board, for instance, in the ad hoc committee for noise abatement, showed that I can get people together and resolve problems. It also happened here just recently. We are now receiving a bid for a dual use of a tennis court. So I think those type of things I bring to the table, and I'll cover that a little more at the end.
Okay. Serving on a board carries significant fiduciary responsibilities. How do you view your fiduciary responsibilities, and how will that impact the way you approach your participation on the board?
In my opinion, the board fiduciary responsibility is the prime one and the most important one that a board member has. Even more important than hiring the right manager or outside group. That's particularly important when we have a situation like we do now where we're using FirstService. Because if we do it properly and have them manage the operations, our really main control oversight apparatus is the budget. And unless we're on top of the budget and know what's in it and why it's being changed, we're not doing our job, and we've totally lost control of the operations. I think in this last 2 years, fiduciary responsibility, when I first came in this term, was an issue, and I think the board in the last 2 years has done a reasonably good job of strengthening up that particular deficiency. A couple of examples would be we came up with a strategy to get a return of our money that was being held from a previous outside vendor. Second thing is that we made a substantial change in the not only who did the RDA, but how we approached the RDA. We had a $10,000 minimum before it could be considered a reserve item, which was absolutely crazy. And we dropped it to 25, which at least was acceptable. To me, it should have been lower, but in any event, we have a reserve situation now that is much more responsible and accurate. We also have, for the first time in many years, some pretty serious discussions on how sustainable is our expenses, how much are we going to tap or depend and rely upon preservation fund. do we really need to take it every year to the extent that we have been? And we took it much less for 2021 than was in 2020 or 2019. And then finally, I think it's not fiduciary from the standpoint of looking at dollars and cents in the budget or reserve, but we have to be cognizant that our policies also have to be fiduciarily responsible. And an example of that, I think, is we have a policy that says we shall not get out in front of the CDC, local authorities, etc., on COVID. Well, that has potentially some dollar and cents implications also, because if we did, we would be not mitigating risk of somebody, it does go south and then suddenly we have a lawsuit, etc. So it's not strictly the budget, but primarily the budget.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, can you describe for us how you see the role of the Board of Directors versus the role of our management company, First Service?
Very simply, the board makes policy, the management executes it and operates the village. And in terms of input of policy recommendations to the board, that comes primarily from the management, but also from the various charter committees, and also from any resident who just has a good idea. And if I stay out of your business, I will have a lot less to worry about in terms of all the things that we can't fix.
Very good, sir. What specific project or issues are of particular interest to you for the board to work on over the next year?
I've been flying solo now. I'm gonna pull out some notes for a moment. I have, and this is where you have a personal opinion, obviously. I have 4 items that I've identified as very high priority, front burner type of things. Number 1 is continue to be on top of and manage the COVID crisis. We've been pretty lucky so far. Whether that's going to continue is anybody's guess, but we owe it to our residents, our staff, our vendors, our visitors from outside to make sure that we are not putting anybody in danger, to continue doing that. Second thing that I would put up in front is we not only have 4 or possibly 5 new board members, or relatively new, one has a month's experience now, but we also have a new general manager, and I think we need to get onto the finding everybody on the same page path as soon as we can, and that's going to take a little bit of work, probably not as much as it appears, but it's going to take maybe 1 or 2 meetings for not only you to know us, but for us to know you and see what you want to do.
Sure.
The third thing is just 2 words: geese problem. It's there, and you've probably heard it already in at least 2 or 3 of the earlier comments. And then the 4th thing is, I think one area that we have been very remiss in is the general area of maintenance and project management. And we need to really shore that up. We are an older facility, our pipes are getting old, our walls are getting old, our pavement, asphalt is cracking. We were not built in 2 years ago by the Toll Brothers. And we need to put more time more effort and better effort into our maintenance efforts. And that goes also for getting projects done on time and on schedule and in budget. A few of the low-hanging fruits, to quote you, David, I think we ought to take a look at moving the front gate to the back. That's where the front was supposed to have been originally and was, I believe. I say that for two reasons. I think it could, with very little cost, improve the aesthetic approach, and probably equally as important, it would at least lower the probability that we're going to have one of our residents killed on Bell Road. And if we made Bell Road entrance, exit, both required by a transponder, and everything else through the front exit, I think it would be a much better situation. And it wouldn't require changing addresses or anything. All you're doing is changing where you enter. Another one, you and I talked about it. I think we ought to, without much expense and effort, come up with a skills inventory of Sun Village residents, and that's available to the general manager in terms of particular skills, whether they be plumbing, electricity, whatever. And if it worked and people were responding to it, it could even be used for residents to say, do you know somebody, or how do I find somebody? And then the third thing, I think we need to get a plan for upgrading, I think what the activity office is now calling the upper level terrace. Basically, it's from the doors right outside here through the patio all the way up to the end. And we've had some sort of not very well coordinated attempts to do that. We were supposed to have had a fix to the patio where you didn't get rained on. Granted, it didn't rain much, but Peter's had 2 people slip out there on the couple of days that we have had rain. We were supposed to have a plan, and it never materialized for the rest of the terrace. We're having events out there with a couple hundred people. We're having a request to have a fire pit out there. We've had a request to have a tiki hut or something of that nature where residents in the pool could get a drink. And there needs to be a coordinated effort to say, okay, here are some options for that whole area. Let's not piecemeal it. Okay, we only got one recommendation from the amenities committee, and that was to put a permanent concrete fire pit right in the middle, which thankfully was not real high in priority. Okay, and then there's a couple of long-range things I would like to mention. One, I fully support Bill Horton's initiative, which is when we cut down a tree, we plant one. Let's not lose the greenness of Sun Village. And I think we need to take a look at the possibility of bringing the guard service in-house. I know when we brought the landscaping in-house several years ago, it was predominantly to get control, but the side benefit was well over $100,000 a year of savings. And there might be a little more fruit there than just the low hanging. And the same would be maybe only a quick study between the carport tops in the condos And the roof here in the main building, we've got a lot of space to put solar panels. And we might find that we could save not only the village, but also the condos a considerable amount of money. So those are all sort of things for the new manager to ponder a little bit, rather than just me.
Okay, Jim, we've concluded the list of questions, and I wanted to extend to you an opportunity for a closing statement.
Okay, I am very committed to Sun Village. As my biography indicates, I've been pretty active in it. You and I, Dave, talked about Sun Village as many things. It's people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Sometimes they're kids or grandkids. It's people with 7-figure net worths and others with month-to-month Social Security checks. It's very active people and people who stay at home and read a book and enjoy a quiet life. So we have to be a village that accommodates all of that. And I think I bring a perspective that is a little unique because I have been an owner and landlord in Sun Village. I have been a condo resident in Sun Village. I have been a homeowner, single-family homeowner in Sun Village. I have been a snowbirder in Sun Village, and I have been a full-time resident in Sun Village. And I've been a person active in the governance system, and also a person who for a while has been very inactive in the governance system. So I think that brings a perspective that maybe is a little unique, and as I say, I think it's a wonderful place to live, and I want to keep it that way and make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jim Connor. I also want to thank the audience for joining us in this very important forum. And I want to also encourage you to contact my office if you have any question with regard to the materials that are sent to you in the coming days with regard to the election process and also the annual meeting. It's been a condensed election process. It will also be a condensed annual meeting because of the COVID realities, but we'll have meaningful and complete closure on both of those topics. And again, please contact us if we can help you understand any of that. And in closing, I want to just encourage you and hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you very much.